Hello.
Welcome to the On Point podcast.
Exciting. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, having a cup of tea with an Englishman.
Yes, absolutely. In London with my tea and you're in Bergen with your tea. Perfect. What else could be more perfect? Yes.
I met you when you were here in Bergen. You were directing a play that didn't have a grand premiere, but it had a small one. I saw that.
Yes, it didn't have the premiere that we wanted, but we were actually, in some ways, it was a kind of a good audience because it was a play that had children in it as well. So we had two teams of children. So the other team were invited, and one parent from the team that was on stage were invited, and it was kind of sort of the perfect audience, really. It was only 20 people, which is a bit frustrating, but that's just the way it is. And I think I spoke before our two premieres because of two sets of children, and said this is the perfect audience. You, as parents, have been through this with us. We started rehearsing in February, then was shut down. I came home, and then came back in the end of September to quarantine, and then we started again. So actually, in some ways, it was probably the best audience that we could have because they've been through it, parents as well. So it was kind of cute, actually.
Yeah.
But not the premiere we would usually have, no.
No, but it was good that you were able to finish and have a view, I guess. Yeah.
Yes,
but
and I'm very lucky to do that because the UK, we don't do that right now. So very lucky to have actually finished and put something on stage. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing in these challenging times.
Very much.
So now you're back in London, and for those who don't know you, I mean, we have a lot of friends in common, so that's how we were introduced, and we have a lot in common too. But for those who don't know you, please share more about like what you're doing.
Well, I have sort of a mixed bag, as we say here, but also actually all connected together. So originally I was an actor and performing in the West End at a very young age. That now I'm a theatre director and have been directing theatre for, I think it's about 20 years now. Gosh, various works, brand new work, classical work, plays, musicals, children's, a very huge amount of different type of work, which I've been very lucky to do. But I also have been working in schools and with young people up to 21 and adults, sort of coaching and mentoring them, and at schools teaching mindfulness and meditation and guiding, I suppose is the word, to allow people to find their own well-being and their own self-being, and also coaching that with adults as well. And I'm also currently doing a counselling course, so that's possibly a future thing as well. So various things, and lots of other things along the way. But that's what I mainly do. I'm a mentor of well-being and self-care, and theatre director. I suppose those would be my two titles, and I'm also a governor of a school here in London for well-being and safeguarding.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to start calling myself that too, like a well-being, self-care, like as a yoga teacher. And then, I've been on stage mostly in Italy, also here in Norway, but it's we also have a dance background, both of us. We're both coming from the dance world, so we have so much in common. And sometimes it's it's a little bit challenging, like explaining what you do and who you are. But since we're so much into this mindfulness field, we know that we are not these titles. We're not our job per se. We're so much more than that. And in these times when, you told me, and I've seen it on the news, of course, in the UK, it's a very challenging time, for a lot of people all over the world, but specifically in the performance art industry, right?
Yeah, yeah, very much. It's well, it doesn't really exist, which is very strange. Just to give you an example, every Christmas we have in the UK a thing called a pantomime. It's a very traditional thing we've had for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and nearly every theatre, not the West End so much, but one theatre in the West End, but every theatre in the UK generally has a pantomime. It's a big variety show. It's usually based on a fairy story, but it's very commercial and silly and ridiculous, and men playing women's characters, women playing men characters. So it's a whole sort of comedy traditional thing that we have in the UK, and it also is actually one of the first things a child ever sees in the theatre. So a lot of people, young performers, or any performer, or anyone in the arts, may have seen a pantomime as their first sort of trip to the theatre. So those no longer exist this year. Those do not exist this year. I did hear from a producer friend who said that 9 pantomimes are going to happen, which, if you think about the amount of theatres in the UK, that's ridiculous. They will only be an hour with no pause, no interval, and socially distanced. And so it's so to put it down in a sort of easier form, the arts doesn't really exist. The West End is shut down. Yeah, and I bought some tickets for a show yesterday, but that was for July. So that's where we are currently in the UK, and artists are having a little bit of a hard time. So is everyone. So let's not just say poor artists. Everyone is having a hard time. And yeah, it's a whole industry that's on hold at the
Yeah.
moment, and that's
And
affecting people financially and socially and mental health wise, as is of course, everyone that's affected, any industry.
yeah, so for us freelancers who do, we work on what's it called in English? The project based. Uh,
Well, we freelance and or sort of self-employed, or we are working project by project. That's how
yeah,
we do it. It's not necessary. I mean, you may have a project that is going to happen next or next year, but you're not. There's usually going to be a gap, so you are project to project to project to project. Yes.
yeah. So that's already like a very uh, a, a lot of people would say that's not a safe job because it's not like a 9 to 5 necessarily, like you have your lifetime contract, but so that you know juggling a lot of things, we're already used to living with uncertainty,
Mm,
having to stand on more feet than than just the one.
mm,
Uh, so we're already, I think, advantaged in a way, even though it's very challenging. Um, we have this superpower of being very creative and very flexible. That is that is actually what we're needing to be in these
mm.
times.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people think that if you, someone used to say to me, which I think is a terrible phrase, you're only as good as your last job. I mean, the last performing job you did was, you're as good as that's what you are. And if you're not doing anything, you're nothing. Which is an appalling phrase. But I think what's interesting is that if you're a freelance, yes, you're doing a performance, and then when that finishes, you will do something else that may be arts related for work, or it may not be arts related for work. But what's and that's sometimes, oh, that's really sad, you've got to do this other job. But actually, what people don't realize is that actually, while you're doing that other job, whether it is painful or whether it's joyful, you are gaining so much more skills as a human being to then express into the art or be creative, or in the case of what's happening right now, you're sort of forced is the wrong word, but you're forced to be a bit more creative, and you can reconnect to childhood dreams. Maybe you wanted to be an artist. Maybe you wanted to build a car. Maybe so you kind of forced into a new way of creativity, and especially now we are more than ever. And sometimes that's challenging, and sometimes that's okay, let's go and do this. And so you open up more aspects of yourself. So if we're not in a pandemic and you're in that situation, you open more aspects of yourself. You then bring all of those aspects into whatever different parts of performance work that you're doing, or writing, or understanding, or empathy would grow vastly. So actually, the freelance life, even though it can be challenging, and mainly its challenges are financially, even though it is challenging, it's actually it's like being at school all the time. Like being at school all the time, learning, and then expressing. So so anyone that's listening who's freelance and has that feeling, oh, I'm not working now, so I'm not worth anything. Look at where you are, look at what you're doing, and find what's that learning, even if it's something really that you find painful to do, because there are those jobs that when you're an artist, I'm an artist, and then you have to do, I don't know, clean toilets or something, I don't know. What is the learning there? And I suppose we're going into the world of being mindful. What is your learning in that situation? And also, if you don't want to do that again, where can you place yourself the next time?
Yeah, I love that, because I've had so many jobs. I've been cleaning to, helping elderly, working with kids, and I've learned so much throughout these jobs that I, can implement in different ways that you really wouldn't expect necessarily. But that's the question that you just like asked. Um, this is, I think it's a fruit of working with meditation and mindfulness. Like, what can I learn from this situation? Even though it's challenging me, because that's how you really grow, spiritually, mentally. um, what, because these are challenging times. And when we spoke before, we've all, had our challenges in our life. And when you look back at those difficult times, I'm sure that you can see that those were the times where you grew the most personally.
Yeah, I mean, there's one big situation in my life that really I've grown so much from, and am sort of thankful for, but at the time, definitely not thankful, or wasn't aware of growing. And that was when I was in an abusive relationship for 20 years, where I was made to feel like nothing. And again, let's be very clear, I chose that as well, even though I didn't know it was my choice. So I was made to feel I was nothing and worthless. I was in hospital, whatever, for 20 years. So I would say maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I became to the realization that actually that was where I grew. And this is where I wouldn't probably be able to do some of the work I do now without having gone through that trauma, without being able to connect with some people on some level of their traumas. That it was really powerful, that I learned so much. I learned, that will never happen again. So I learned, and that's empowering within itself. But I also learned that we are all so very fragile, but also very powerful. And so I think that example is one that I use all the time. So when I'm in I definitely has to do with my work. When I'm in the rehearsal studio and we're discussing characters or whatever, I do believe that this, not only this, but that 20 years has a lot to do with, now I'm analyzing in a different way, because I'm seeing it differently, because I've got different points of view. I've got the point of the person being abused, myself, and the person being the abuser, the other person. So those are very different perspectives. That doesn't make me a superhuman at all, but it makes me have a different perspective, and I definitely wouldn't be talking the way I'm talking if that wasn't one of the things I've gone through in my life, not the thing. And I do think my journey from that to heal myself, having gone through that, definitely made it a bigger experience of journey of learning, because it was so big, this trauma, that the only way to and learn from that is to have a big spiritual journey to learn. So in some ways I am grateful. However, during the pandemic, I was triggered because I was then, well, it was on the BBC News that people were being trapped with their abusers because we couldn't go out. We're in lockdown. So that's another whole thing that made me, it all came up a little bit for me, that actually my escape was going to the shop. My escape was maybe seeing a friend. So those things have been taken away from certain people. So the well-being that I do now is connected to maybe those people, and let's bring that forth. Let's discuss that. Let's allow, and sometimes that's not easy to do, especially if you are trapped. So I'm not really sure if that has answered your question.
Yeah, I don't even remember my question, but thank you for sharing. That's very, yeah. It takes a lot of courage, to be vulnerable, and yeah, we've all have we all have our stories, and we all have our traumas and things. But for me too, I'm like, yeah, looking back on a lot of really, really hard times in my life. That's definitely where I grew. Yeah, you, like you said, you take your power back. You know that you have a role to play, like being actors. All the world is the stage, like. So we can look at things from different perspectives, and that's a great strength. Because most people, they point fingers and blame specifically in this situation that we're in right now. This is a huge trigger for everyone, and we just want to point out what everyone else is doing wrong, but we're not really owning our shit. And this is, a natural reaction to things. But then when we are now forced to, sit mostly inside, not socializing that much, not going out on town. I've spoken about this on another podcast in Norwegian here, but yeah, it is triggering. So we need, for those of us who've already been through a lot and have learned and have studied it a lot, so we have a lot of tools. So this is, when we were speaking a little bit before, yeah, this, like how this pandemic has maybe changed our line of work, or how it's forcing even us to step it up and share more and of these tools that we have.
Yeah, I think it's yes. I mean, sharing these tools. I've been doing that for a while now, but it's interesting how people are sort of not necessarily paying more attention, but they're connected to it more, because suddenly, oh wow, that is affecting me than I realized. And what just came to my mind is, I do remember when we had our first lockdown here in the UK, everyone was sorting the attic out, everyone was sorting the spare room out, everyone was sorting the garden out, everyone was redecorating when they could buy paint, and which is great, which is all wonderful. And yes, get your shit in order, as you said, in the physical world, in your home, absolutely. But once you've done all that, what then? You still have to sit down. You still have to sit there and go, okay, I'm with myself now. And this is when the stuff that we avoid by working, or we avoid by socializing, or we avoid by whatevering, arrives for us. And this is the moment where we have to say, okay, so what am I going to do with this? This has come up for me. It always comes up for me, but usually I do something about it to push it aside. So what am I going to do? And this is, I think, the point where people are now coming to me and saying, oh, well, this has come up and I'm not really sure what to do. And I think the tools that you're talking about is to first learn what it is, what is the thing, and see it from, even if you need to, I don't mean dive into your problems and issues, and I don't mean that, but have a, we talked earlier about the perspective, in a sense that when you travel abroad and then you come back and you appreciate where you live more, have that perspective of standing back. Now, it's not always easy to do that because you're emotionally involved, but maybe if you have that tool of thinking about being a narrator or a storyteller, and just sitting with yourself and being the storyteller or the narrator who's slightly detached from the story because the narrator is telling it, not being it. Just allow that to your story to exist, and allow that time to think, okay, what do I want to do with this? Do I need to reach out to people, whether that's professional or friends or coaches like myself, or is there something what I want to do? I have time now. What is it that made me feel good as a child, and where can I place myself in the good feeling places, that where I can start to look at this situation, which sounds complicated, and in some ways it is, but in some ways it's quite easy, and that is just by the being still or just listening to music that you like. I think it's, first of all, go to places where you feel good. Go to places where you feel good and remember that feeling. It's almost as if you place, when I do meditations, once we get to the end of the meditation, I say, well, you've created this feeling, this thought, this whatever. Place it somewhere on you, whether that's your knee or your heart or your head, or place it, and know that you can find it again if necessary. So that is by looking at pictures that make you laugh. That is by listening to music that really touches you. That is by whatever, nature, flowers, whatever. And it's almost as if you take a photograph of the feeling, you place it into yourself, and then you bring that feeling to the thing that's coming up and saying, I'm going to look at it in this space. I'm going to look at it in this space, not, oh my gosh, space. And I think, again, it sounds way easier said than done, but I think find people or YouTube videos or podcasts that can help you get to those places, because there is so much stuff out there to guide you.
There is, but there's also a big jungle. Like I know that you have some guided meditations on your YouTube, so we can link to those, because that's a good way to start, with a voice guiding you. Like I have a yoga nidra up. I've also on my blog, on my website, I've put some prompts and tools. I recently did a shadow work blog, because I think that is a good tool, with some journal prompts, and just like a little bit of guidance. There are a lot of great books out there and resources. So yeah, maybe I'll share more, and of course you're going to do that too. But
guided meditation, as you were saying, is great, because you have a voice to take you through. And again, there are thousands of guided meditations out there. And the way I would suggest is to just listen to the voice. And if you don't like the voice, you move on, and until you hear a voice and you go, oh, that voice is okay. Yeah, I like that. But then start to listen. Because if it's going to be a voice you don't like, it's going to annoy you, and then you'll be like, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, that's cool, because as a yoga teacher, when I've been away and when I come back, my students are like, oh yeah, there you are, I love your voice, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, with this podcast thing and recording meditations, I'm like, yeah, I'm not that bad. I've listened to a whole lot of guided meditations in my life, and I know that you have this gift too of storytelling and painting these beautiful visual images, and And that's how we are actually using also like our acting training.
Mm,
With voice training, we have a lot of experience with this, but also like being creative and creating images for people and
mm,
taking them on journeys. So yeah, that's us being very creative and resourceful, and also very helpful in these times, because like you said, once you sit down, a lot of people think like, oh, for me to do yoga, everything has to be clean. I have to have this perfect outfit on.
yes.
The ego, the mind comes up with all of these excuses. No, I don't have any time for meditation. Like, no, I
Mm,
should be calmer to, yes, go out and run and go for a walk if you have a lot of pent up energy. But once you sit down, it's like a myth. I think everybody visualizes this in their head, maybe they've seen this in magazines, in photos, like you're sitting on top of the mountain in the Himalayas, and just like the ease and enlightenment is just like pouring into every cell of your body. And yeah, I've had this image too, we,
yeah,
we, we, yeah, we go
yeah,
on this quest for a
yeah,
reason. Yeah.
yeah. We do go on this quest, and we do. I mean, yeah, of course, I've done that too, and then I realized, oh well, I'm just going to be searching forever. It's just
Yeah.
because it's not. It's in essence that's searching for perfection, and that's not going to happen. I know. It's really always makes me smile when I do meditation with children, and they all suddenly sit like this, with their hands, and I'm like, well, we're not really doing. We're not doing energies in our fingers. You're just going to sit down. It's all you're going to do. You're just going to sit down. There's no. If I put my fingers like this, I'm at the top of. I'm a guru, and I'm at the top of the mountain. It's very very simple. And that's the thing about. I always say to people that are starting meditation, I said, you will never ever get a certificate for being the best meditator. I'm sorry that if you want that, you need to let that go, because there's no competition who's the best meditator. And there are many forms of meditation, there are many different ways, but you're not going to get that prize. It's just not going to happen. So let it go in the first place and get it wrong. There's no getting it right anyway. But I mean, people often say, oh well, I tried and I kept thinking about other things, and I think, well, okay, that's that. So I can't do it. Okay, but maybe the other thing is the thing you need to think about. Maybe that's the thing, even if it is what's for dinner. Maybe that is something you need to think about. Or is it, oh well, I fell asleep? So, well, maybe you need to go to sleep. Allow what happens. Don't be judgmental of yourself. Don't be self-judgmental, and don't
Mm.
expect it to be like your friend who said, oh, you must do this thing. Don't expect it to be like anybody else's experience, because it's your experience, and your experience is the most valuable, not somebody
Yes.
else's experience, because you'll never get somebody else's experience.
Yes.
The same as in the theatre, you get someone playing a part, a character, um, and and then someone else plays that character some other time, whatever. That actor will never play it the same as the other. There'll be elements. Obviously, the character is the character, but one person can never be a carbon copy of the other, and that's when we start to lose ourselves as well, and allow the ego to take over.
Yeah. And this is so important. And it was, yeah, you said a lot of on point quotes there. For people who are not experienced in meditating, maybe you're already meditating and you don't even know it. Like
Yeah.
the job of the brain is to think. So it's natural to sit down and think a lot of things. Like I made this video in Italian explaining this, but but I can briefly, say it in English now. But when you sit down, there, to just like dissect one thought and then the next. No, there are trains of thoughts that run through your through your mind, and these will take you on a journey. But then you come back to yourself, and like you
Mm.
said, this is basic, but it's so important. But a lot of people haven't really studied their own ego, their own mind, and in its ways, because it will take you down so many traps. And yes, you will be more skilled maybe, or more trained to just like, okay, now it's taking me on this journey and I'm just going to come back
Mm,
instead of going on it. So
mm,
in that way, you will learn how to retrain your mind by just observing these things. But in the beginning, this will be hard.
mm.
You will go out of your mind. You will find all these excuses, but you just sit and you just observe them and you do nothing. But
It's
then, yeah, it's like training a muscle. You go to the gym and you pick up these heavy weights. No, it's not going to be easy in the beginning. It's the same with mindfulness and meditation.
mm. It's very similar to when people go on retreats or a weekend workshops or whatever, and they have an amazing time and they feel enlightened, they feel connected, they feel like they've uh, made progress, whatever that is, and it's like, wow, yes. And then they get home and it's like, oh, oh my god, I failed. I didn't do this. It didn't work. It was just a dream. Da, 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 da. And it's similar to what I was talking about when you create the feeling and you take it home with you. It's what you've learned on that workshop or that retreat is to bring it home and then be with the stuff, your place where you've placed all your anxieties or all your things in your four walls, or the things, the pictures that you look at remind you of stuff, or whatever. Is to bring that into, instead of coming in, open the door and going, oh, now I've got to fight with, is that to just bring it in slowly, allow it as you walk through the door, literally allow everything you've learned to just come through the door, allow it to have a place to sit. You don't have to walk through the door and, oh, now I have to be perfect, and oh my gosh, there's that, and oh my gosh, there's that. Just come in and allow what you've learned to slowly absorb into your environment. And if there is a picture that makes you go, oh god, change it. If there are certain little things that you've had for ages sitting on the windowsill that makes you go, oh my god, change it. And if it's just that one thing you change, you have made a huge step forward. So being in your home, sitting still, breathing, taking time, what do I want to do now? What's the first small thing I want to do now? And if that is, I want to move that chair over there, you have made a shift. You've made a change. You've made a
Mm.
shift of energy and a change. So if you can do that, there's endless things you can do, but you take it step by step. Same with meditation. Take it step by step, step by step. One one step at a time. And I believe totally in simplicity. Simple for me is so powerful. Like a tree. I've got trees outside my window here. There are no leaves on them right now, but I know that in spring and summer, this whole road will be full of trees with leaves on. Quite simple, but not really. It's an amazing, fantastic uh, energy that's going on throughout the whole year. But I just see the joy of the leaves, and then see the joy of no leaves. So if that is your goal, to have the leaf on the tree, the one step at a time is the whole year that the tree is growing, is taking nutrients from the ground, is going through the weather. That's the one step at a time to the inevitable, which is the beautiful tree leaf on the tree, which then will also turn yellow or brown and drop off. And that's not about dying, that's about the cycle. So I
Yeah.
did that. I did that. Right. What can I do next? Okay. How can I get to the next leaf? Okay. What does the tree do? Maybe I should go step by step as the tree does. Take.
Yes, and I love this metaphor of nature, and I know that you use this in your guided meditations too,
Mm,
but it's so simple, but it's also so complicated for the mind. No, it's too simple. It has to
yeah.
be more complicated. But
Yes.
really, I've been talking about this for years, just like look to nature. Nothing blooms all year round. There's a time and a place to let things go. This is also a spiritual lesson, to let things go and not to be in resistance in meditation to the present moment.
Mm.
Actually just allowing things to be. But I just want to mention a thing that, this thing about going on a retreat or a holiday, can, now that we cannot do these things, like what are we escaping from in our lives, how can we maybe in these times, it could be a great opportunity to look at your life a little bit differently. Like, what was it, like you mentioned, that I wanted to do as a child? Am I doing that? Am I on the right track? Should I maybe shift some things, maybe create a life that I don't need a vacation from? And also, how can you find these little oases of peace in your everyday life? Like you said, it's so important to, like with yoga and meditation, there are a lot of traps in this world too. Like you
Mm.
said, you don't get a certificate, but a lot of people, they go after the certificate because
Mm.
that's how the teachers make money. And
Mm.
there are a lot of
Mm.
big egos and gurus in that world too, but don't get blindsided by that. By learning how to meditate, and maybe with a yoga or a body work practice, you get into contact with your own compass. You know what's right. You learn to trust your body again and listen to it. So, you are your own guru in this,
Mm.
there's, yes, some people might guide you along the way, but um, don't lose yourself. That's also a big, big trap that I see.
Yeah, it's it just came to my mind. I did a course which is online. Actually, it's on Udemy. So if you get, it's Udemy, spelled Udemy. It's an online huge platform, and I did this course called Owning the Block. So it says six videos, 4 videos, can't remember. And it guides you through owning the blocks in your life. So you get to own them; they don't get to own you. And it's each video is a different approach. Well, no, it's the same approach with different topics. One of those topics is about friends and people in your life, because some people in your life can be feeding the block by giving you what they want, how they want you to behave, or how they think you should behave. And so we get caught up in this little world of this is who I am, this is what I should be, but I don't feel, it feels uncomfortable and it doesn't feel right. So in this course that I wrote and did videos, as I was doing it, I found it more and more fascinating. This owning the block, owning your shit, as people a lot say, but owning the block, but also not killing the block, because it's a bit like someone said to me, "Oh, I'm going to go to the jungle in Peru, and I'm going to go and kill my ego." I was like, "Oh." I'm like, wow, but you actually need your ego, because your ego is a protective. It's a protective because it teaches you, but it just, what we do is we allow it to own us. And I suppose
Mm,
it's finding that to go, well, it's not going to own me, but I still need you. So it's thanking it for it to arrive. So when those horrible feelings come, it's like, oh, thank you for arriving. So what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with this? Or am I just going to allow it to overtake me? And I think, coming back to your point, is that now we're sitting on our own, now that we're sitting down or not going to retreats or yeah, well, going anywhere, is to understand that the block or the ego is not there to hurt us or harm us. But if we allow it to, it will take control. So we have to be its master as opposed to its master being us. And that can be quite frightening. But I think as we keep going on about sitting still, and I think in the video I give exercises and journaling. That was the point I was coming to. Journaling. That's definitely one thing you can do now, because you don't have to go to a retreat to journal. You don't have to go to the top of the mountain to journal. You can get a little book or a piece of paper, and you can write down how you feel. And by writing it down how you feel, you're sort of getting it out of yourself. You can then look at it the next day, reflect on it, and think, is that true? What do I want to do with that? So it's that's in one way. Or you've just written it and it's out of you. So journaling, I think, is a great tool, especially in these times that we can't go out or go to retreat. You just get a pen and a piece of paper and write down how you're feeling, or how was the day, or anything, because you are not allowing it to consume and stay in you, so the ego can attach to it and use it.
Yeah, it's a good tool. Thank you for sharing that. It's so important to, find tools that work for you. But it's also a great tool for awareness and actually looking at the ways. It's maybe more difficult to detect it when it's up here, but once it's on paper and you're already an observer of what you're written.
Yeah, and here's some sort of an example for performers, is the fact that I always used to slightly misunderstand, and misunderstand when people used to say on the opening night, or when you're performing, oh, are you nervous? And if you say you're not, then there's something wrong with you, because you should actually be petrified before you go on stage. I used to think, why should I be petrified and absolutely scared of something that I love, something that I've worked on for the last how many weeks? Here I am about to show it and share it with an audience, and I have to be petrified. That doesn't make sense to me. So I sat with that for quite a long time, and then what I realized is that nervous feeling, that sort of energy, oh my gosh feeling, we have interpreted as fear. And what it really is saying, hey, body, here's a little bit of extra energy for you to go out there, for you to communicate and share with your audience and share with your fellow performers. Here's a little extra for you so that you can beam and do whatever you need to do. But we've interpreted it as, oh my God, I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to get the steps wrong. I'm going to get the lines wrong. And we all go kind of like this. And then suddenly we're like, oh, when we're on stage, which doesn't make sense. So whenever I hear people say, oh, I say, well, yes, okay, nervousness, yes, that's because we're going out to do something in front of people that we may have never done before. But it's to our advantage, not our disadvantage. So that's a performer's way of looking at
Yeah, that's
fear, owning the block.
I was thinking about that before we started recording because, being a performer myself, I noticed this come up even when I'm supposed to do a podcast or a presentation or just anything. I noticed that little, that energy just bubbling up, and I'm like, I know what it is. We've been trained in this, so I know what it is, and I'm like, okay. I have my fears around, not knowing what to say, or maybe if I'm talking to people in different languages, all of these fears that my ego is telling me, like, what will people think of me? Like, what if I say something really stupid? But then I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I worked on this, but I just wanted to mention this because I meet a lot of people who think like, Celine, are you afraid of speaking in front of people? Like, you're so used to it. You're trained in this. Yes, we have this training, but we all have this fear. And the ego feeds off of fear. So in these times, this can be extremely challenging if you don't have any tools to deal with fear, actually.
Yeah. And I think I wrote an affirmation once, which was... it was very long, but I edited it down. It's like, hey, fear, how are you doing today? Thank you for coming, or something, but I've got this. Thanks for arriving. Thanks for giving me the warning or the lesson. But you know what? I've got this. I've got this. You don't need to take charge. And I think, again, that sort of, taking that moment to step back a bit in a situation, or if you're sitting down and reflecting, or if you're actually in the situation, which is sometimes a little difficult, but it's not, it's just by doing it by practice, is to have that moment to step back and go, okay, so this is where I am. What decision do I really want to make, as opposed to what decision do I usually make? And the one I usually make, is that healthy for me? or should I choose what my intuition and my feeling is telling me right now? Because your intuition is one of the greatest gifts given to you. Because again, your intuition will never hurt you or lie to you uh, in a state of well-being.
Yeah, that's so important. And yeah, I was thinking about, yeah, I have this shadow work blog up
Mm.
in English, but I've written a Norwegian one about your inner critic.
Mm.
So that's also a really good tool to, your ego, or, all of these voices in your head, because we internalize a lot of the voices throughout our lives. Who does this sound like, this voice? Or you write things down, who does this sound like, where did I pick this critical voice up? And this work, just doing this on myself, has been mind blowing, because a lot of people that are bullied, they continue to bully themselves, like
Mm.
being abused in a lot of ways. Mentally, you can continue to abuse yourself. So that, yeah, that is terrifying. And but it's okay, bringing it back to the inner critic, just
Mm.
like naming that voice, your inner critic.
Mm.
For me, I named her after a Swedish
Mm.
housewife, reality star, who's
Okay.
really
Yeah.
cruel. And she's really gruesome, so she's called Gunilla. And I'm like, oh, hello, Gunilla is here to play. Oh my
Yeah.
god, she's
Yeah.
just horrible. She always tries to tear me down, and she doesn't
Mm.
make me do anything because, yeah, she's just horrific.
Yeah, and that's very therapeutic, and that is what's used in therapy. And I would absolutely say name it and give it a ridiculous name, because it then means so it's not as powerful. But also, I would suggest that you draw it and draw what it looks like and title it. And once you've drawn it, you go, oh, there you are. Oh, there you are. Okay, so now I see you. Now I've got a name for you. When you arrive, I can see you, call you by name, say thanks, and then you are ridiculous, so bye-bye. You
Yeah,
know, and
I
just think
love
about
that. Yeah,
the inner critic as well. So not last year, year before, I was working for Amazon. I was doing a job with Amazon, working on a young schools program, where they design an app for social conscious, and the Amazon would make the app. So I was a project manager, and I I don't know, I sat there every day for a year thinking, what am I doing here? This is ridiculous. There's my name and project manager title should never come together, because they are ridiculous. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I realized my engagement with people was the talent that I had for the role. However, there was definitely moments of self-sabotage. There was definitely moments of what imposter syndrome
yeah,
throughout the whole time, and moments. Oh, and it was an organization who I've worked with as a coach. So it was just sort of, now I was a project manager, and all of my friends that were coaches were like, "Oh, you're doing that?" Like, yes, I am. Hi, everybody. And and then the next thing that came out my mouth is, I don't know why I'm doing this, but there's a reason, and so I'm going with it. Uh, for the whole year, I don't know why I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? There's a reason, I don't know. Until, I mean, till this summer, when I created my own summer camp uh, for some young people. And I project managed the hell out of it. And I was so good at project managing it. I was so good at that. And I was like, oh, okay. So I have been on that job, so I can project manage my own stuff and develop the work I do further by understanding how to project manage it. So sometimes when you're in a situation that your inner critic is saying, why are you doing this? Or you've got a job that you think, why am I doing, what is this for? And the self-saboteur comes up. There's always a reason for something. And there's always a reason. So that job ended, that project finished. But maybe if you're stuck in a job, is there something new you can find in the job, or is there something else you would like to pursue? Now, I'm not saying you should go and all now resign from your jobs, and definitely this isn't probably the right time in the world to resign from any job, but find within your job, or find within anything that you're doing, reading a book. Why am I reading this book? There's a reason to read this book. And then towards the end, you may get, oh, okay. So there's always a reason for something. And that's part of self-care as well, because you're finding what's your connection to this, and you're finding what's good for you towards this in something that may not feel comfortable. And, how can you conclude that? Can you find peace with that? Or is there a change that needs to come? And what have you brought along with you in this environment to take forward?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it's about understanding you, and we don't always understand us. And I'm not saying that I'm sitting here knowing I know everything about me, and I never have any triggers, and I'm never down, I'm never depressed. Yes, of course I am. There were times I just think, well, I just want to go into bed and stay in bed because I just feel, of course I do, because I'm human. But I have a slightly different approach to it now. And if I want it to consume me, I will let it consume me and don't speak to me for 2 days. Or I just think, oh, okay, no, this is not going to be helpful for me. What can I do different? Maybe I go to another room. Maybe I put some music on. Maybe I eat. Maybe, shift the energy a bit.
Yeah, it's important to mention, like, we definitely are all figuring this thing called life out, and but I love the whole creative aspect of like drawing your inner critic. That's a cool tool that you mentioned, because for those who are not in a creative job or in this field of performing arts or well-being, a lot of people are like struggling with their own creativity. Like, how can I get outside of my box, this that I have?
I remember
Think
years
outside of the
ago.
box. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember years ago doing a workshop with a friend of mine who grew up in Norway, actually, and it was probation officers. So I don't know what you call that in Norway. We have sort of, when people come out of prison, they have sort of someone that they have to report to. And my sister was head of this big area of probation officers. So we did this workshop because the probation service here in the UK was about to be privatised, which means a lot of probation officers would probably lose their jobs. So morale was not great. And we were brought on as creative madness people to, do some creative stuff to show that you're not just your job. And these people, that being a probation officer is a very dedicated job. It's very triggering. There are lots of people with issues because they're coming out of prison. And so it's a very dedicated and very, job that you would get sort of emotionally attached professionally with your service users, your clients. So we went there and we asked. I remember we asked them to, in their groups, to create a spaceship. It was going to go to Uranus. Very silly, and create. Here's some stuff. Paper, all sorts of stuff. Create a spaceship, and you need to make a component. You need to make a special component or something. So we got them all to do it, and then all one group at a time came up and presented their spaceship. Now, at the beginning of the day, and we did various other things, but at the beginning of the day, they were all in grumpy moods, and they were like, well, we could lose our jobs. We're just concerned about our jobs and we lose our jobs. By the end, when they were doing the presenting, they were laughing, they were happy, they had forgotten about the jobs for a moment, they were being creative, and they were connected to themselves again. And so the point we made is, look, we're not saying that you are now going to go and be a space person and create components, but look at the difference you've made in yourself and look at how creative you've been. So if you have created this silly, ridiculous thing we've asked you to do, what could you create that's new and exciting in your life? And possibly that might create a new sort of job if you do lose your job. So the point of asking a group of people to do something which they would only expect children to do, or small children to do, is that they were allowed to be free. They were allowed to be connect to their child self again. They were allowed to go, we can create. And because it's so, instead of us saying, okay, so you're a probation officer, now what kind of other management role would you like? Then it's like, oh my gosh, but if you say you're going to have to create a component to a spaceship, that's really important. They're having fun. So their mind is open to more possibilities creatively. And so then if you think, oh, we've had fun, we've opened our mind, okay, so where can that open mindedness, where can I use that in my future? Where can I use that? Instead of thinking, oh, I've just got to do the same kind of work, but I'll never get the work. So it was very interesting watching grumpy people with like sour faces at the beginning to laughing noise and really protective of their ridiculous spaceship with their component.
Oh, that sounds so fun. And like how to, expand your mind, because we were creatures of habit. And, when we talked here in Bergen, we were talking a little bit about, different teachers in this field of mindfulness and of awareness. We were mentioning, breaking the habit of being yourself, like how you can even be more creative with how you get up in the morning.
Yeah, yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we spoke about the fact that if you wake up in the morning, you shower and then have breakfast, well, then maybe have breakfast first, then shower. See that the world is okay, that the sky doesn't fall, that it's okay. Okay, that's a tiny, tiny change. Okay, so then I can wake up and decide to be in a certain mindset. It doesn't mean that if things come in the way that are not very nice, it doesn't mean that you've got to say, oh, well, I've decided to be like this, so that's not going to affect me. But what it means is you've decided to be that kind of attitude facing the things that come in the way. So I've decided to be joyful, and something really not joyful comes in my way. Okay, well, I've decided to be joyful, so I'm going to look at it in that attitude and still honoring what's coming my way, but I can solve it in a different mindset. I can solve it a different way instead of using the usual patterns or the old patterns that aren't really helpful in the situation.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, the whole imposter syndrome and the whole self-sabotage things, and we all do this. So for me, like I have different tools, but now, it's difficult for everybody, but I'm still managing to have a positive outlook on life. Maybe I'm born with this skill, but I think that I've really cultivated it a lot because I've faced a lot of challenges. But I noticed this because living in Rome, people would tend to be in Italy more pessimistic, and the young people were more couldn't see the possibilities because of the the politicians, the whole state, and uh, the lack of jobs and all of these, the big crisis and all of that. But so I noticed that even though I try to stay positive, I had this Norwegian positivity ingrained in me. Uh, you become the people you spend time around. So I noticed this, that I really had to come back and have a reset, because that being around that kind of mindset affected me negatively. But yeah, in these challenging times, it can be really triggering, also for people who've gone through trauma. So for me, I'm just like stepping it up. So I have my meditation practices and whatnot. But I mentioned to you that I started to swim, or to go into the sea. So I've done that every day this week, and it's forcing me into the present moment with meditation. This can be a journey, what we've been talking about with mindfulness and all of these things. But that is a tool, just like having a cold shower, to just actually stay with it, stay with the uncomfortable feeling, because normally we just run from it once it
Yeah,
becomes uncomfortable.
I think reset is a good word, and I think there's not a reset and like, oh, now it's sorted. It's a constant, not a constant reset, but it's an often reset. Especially when you said about being around negative people spoke, then you would have to reset and just come back to yourself. So otherwise, you're consumed in that. So I think a reset is good. It's a rebalance, a check in. So I would always honor that. I could probably do that more often myself, definitely. And I think, excuse me, I think interesting that you said about swimming in the sea. Um, it's about swimming in the sea or going to vast mountain ranges. They're so big, and we are so small that it puts so much stuff into perspective that actually I am now in the hands of the sea, or I'm now in the hands of these mountains, and actually it's vast, and not that I'm saying, oh, my worries don't mean anything, because your worries are your worries, but I think it's interesting that you can see vastness and go, okay, so I can spread out, I can spread all everything out and have that. It's almost as if you're spreading your issues out of the whole sea or over the whole mountain range, and you can then say, oh, okay, so now I've spread it out further, I can look at it in sections, or I can look at it in moments, and not just all one big thing, because we live in little houses, or we live in, so the elements allow that vastness. And I think that's what we need to learn when we reset, is to not sit there going, I've got to sort all this out, so I've got to sort one bit of it out. I'm sort of repeating myself from what I said earlier, but I think it's that take it at a time. Even with, think, look at the lockdown. We've well, here in the UK, we had it from March till September, some of September, and now we're in another lockdown, which will finish on the 2nd of December, and we've literally had to slow down and take it a step at a time. Even the fact that now I'm kind of interested in going into the West End of London because it's completely empty. So that's actually probably safest place to be COVID wise, but also I could probably go back and be my 16-year-old self when I first came to London and look at it and go, oh wow, isn't it? Because it's a different perspective. I don't have people busy and me being busy around London. I'm looking it through the eyes of no one being there, and relearning and new fresh again. So I'm being 16 again, but not being 16 again, being the age I am now, but having those fresh eyes and seeing, what can I see that I didn't usually see because I was so busy doing what I usually do. So having fresh eyes and fresh resets as much as you can or want to.
Yeah, I definitely, like you mentioned before, I have this outsider perspective of my own country, having lived abroad for that long, and I know what it's like to be a foreigner that's also in its own little bubble. But yeah, I wanted to go back to Italy this year. I was working on my own project, my short movie, and I actually was gonna go to this Scandinavian art circle, Circolo Scandinavo, and work on this. But because of this whole situation, I'm like, no. I, yeah, I have this tendency to, I love to travel and visit new places. And I was like, no, I really need to stay here now. I need to ground myself. And this is, for me, the best place to be. We're not that many people here in Norway, so we maintain, normally all year round, we maintain social distancing. We're not that, yeah. So, and there's a lot of space, there's a lot of nature, which is difficult in a city. I know that in London you have beautiful parks and all of that, which they have in Rome too, but they were closed off.
Mm.
poor people, and saw in the news in Spain and in somewhere in Italy, they were confined to these little apartments and only allowed like a little walk once a day to go and get groceries or
Yeah,
walk your dog.
yeah. Spain and Italy had very severe lockdowns, more than we had in London. But yeah, so yes, that. But yes, absolutely. But what I isn't it strange how we as humans still need to express is that you would then see videos of musicians or opera singers on their balconies singing for everyone in the street, and everyone's, it's like, oh, the arts is healing again. The arts is back. That's the healer. You get these grand opera singers, or you get musicians, or you whatever from their balconies, and you in Spain and Italy, and you're like, oh yeah, there we go. Now we're back. Even though we're stuck in this tiny thing, which is not normal, which is not who we are as humans. But where do we find the inspiration in those moments? And that's an example of inspiration in diversity. I don't know if that's the right word, but in the pandemic.
Yeah, that is. I actually saw a friend of mine who I used to live with. She sent me like a video of the backyard and people making music and singing. So there were all these challenges, and it was, yeah, so nice. Like um seeing people be so resourceful, and there were so many moving scenes from these empty streets and these beautiful artists, and even the ballerinas at the I saw the video of
Mhm.
the opera in Paris made so many beautiful things and offerings. But like you said, the art is a big healer. And what would we do in these times without art, without books, without music, without movies?
Yes, and I think this is where we need to. I was going to say appreciate, but that might be a bit too grand. But I think we need to look at where the arts has its place. That's where we need to look at and understand it, and not take it for granted. And maybe we have taken it for granted, because I think there's a lot of lessons to learn from
Mm,
this whole situation. And I hope we can learn them and not just go straight back to being as we were.
yeah, very, very busy, like you mentioned before, and I've been to London, and people are running around super, super busy. And
Going nowhere,
now,
busy going
yeah,
nowhere.
yeah, and
I've
now
got to
we're
get, I've
forced
got to
to
get there.
slow down.
So busy to go nowhere.
I I have this book, wherever you go, there you are.
Oh, cool! Great title. Yeah.
Yeah, it's John Kabat-Zinn, the
Oh, yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. Of course. Yeah,
So that's a good book on mindfulness. Yeah.
yeah. That looks
By
like
the way,
Norway.
yeah, it does.
It
It's
looks
like a
like Norway.
fjord.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, what are some of your personal self-care practices in these times?
Mm.
We change things up a bit. I guess we all do that, but well, if you have
Mm.
some tips that you want to share.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say I do this every morning, but definitely, as I mentioned earlier, getting up and deciding this is how I want to behave today. This is what I'm going to. This is what I'm going to do today. Whatever challenges come my way, this is what this decision I've made. So I'm learning. There are many different ways to what's the word? Many different ways to execute, to action. There are many different ways to make action. So I'm learning, which means then I have different ways in different situations to behave differently, that are good for myself and others around. So sometimes I wake up with the decision to have this kind of mindset today. meditation, whether that is, and a lot of people are very much about sitting down. I actually like lying in bed meditation. Actually, that works for me. And whether that is simple as the body scan meditation, which is a very well known way where you just basically concentrate on each part of your body so that you're in a calm state. It also is, meditation is also good for your heart and your organs, because you're allowing oxygen to your brain. So that's also for health as well. And I think I don't journal as much as I should, but I think journaling at the end of the day and just taking it literally step by step every day. And I think the way to do that is to just be aware, just have that self-awareness. Sometimes it's not, I mean, I'm not saying I'm in a bubble going, oh, I have full self-awareness, because there are some things that are going to take me out of somewhere and I'm going to behave in a certain way that's maybe not full of self-awareness. But, I think take the time to listen to others, listen to what I found interesting, which I actually maybe have stopped doing, but I don't know, is when you're having a conversation with someone, sometimes you have decided a reaction or you've decided what you're going to say before they've finished what they're saying. So you're preempting something that's not there. So I've made the decision to fully listen to what someone has to say and then react. So those don't necessarily sound like practices as such, but I think the most important one is to find a moment each day to be still. Now, someone might be living with 2 kids or more kids and might have a lot of stuff going around. In the UK, I would suggest that you would go and have a bath with candles on. Baths aren't everywhere in Norway, I know that, but find those moments to just be, even if it's while you're cooking, chopping up, cooking. I'm doing this now. I'm doing this. This is my time. And then allow that to be your time and to just be nothing.
Yeah. Like you can put an intention on any activity and make it into meditation. And that's why I, knowing you and a little bit about your background, all this self-awareness, this working on yourself, and these practices of being mindful and being aware, they transfer into your life. So then you start living your life in the state of yoga, taking the practice off the mat.
Yeah.
This being just aware, and of course, like, things take us out of the present moment all of the time. But with practicing, you become better at returning. And like you said, you can transfer it into cooking or walking and all of these different things. And so this is, now we actually can reap the fruits of all of this hard labor.
And I think intention, you said, is a good one, because I mean, just before we spoke, I was on my school for the counselling, and before I, went into the Zoom meeting, I thought, okay, what's my intention today? What do I want to learn today? So I think everything has you should have an intention. What is my intention to? Let's go back to cooking. What's my intention to cook? My intention to cook is to nourish my body. My intention is maybe to have color, so I have visually have something visual that's nice to look at. It's the senses of the smell. So my intention is to have a good experience, to have a joyful experience, and maybe if I'm cooking for others, so they can share. So there's a lot of intentions within cooking. Cooking in cultures is the sharing of food is a massive thing in many, many, many cultures. So what's my intention in this moment?
Yeah, and I love this, doing everything with intention. I've I work a lot with this in yoga and meditation, but I wrote a blog about this. This thing about being like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Like you said, it might seem simple, but actually listening, not a whole lot of people are doing it. Like you said, we're already planning in our mind. And of course, with the podcast, I have to try to stay a little bit on point, but um, it's always better when you're really present and taking in what the other person is saying, because yeah, once you become aware of this, you can notice how people are just like talking over each other all the time. And, I think that we all want to be heard.
Mm.
We all want someone to be present with us.
Yeah, but it's not a competition. Again, it's not a competition. So allow the other person to speak, and then then you speak, and then you're going to have more attention. People are going to pay attention to what you say because you've heard what they're saying, you've listened, and you've responded, as opposed to planning the response as they start to speak. So it becomes a bit of a competition, but actually, if you're in relationship, and that's what you are when you're talking with somebody, you are then paying attention to each other and in the present moment, obviously.
Yeah, now we get to practice this podcasting on Zoom.
Yeah, well,
But
we get to practice everything on Zoom at the moment.
yeah, but other than your own practices, like what inspires you in your work?
Um, well, the people I work with, so there's so varied people I work with. So I think any given moment, there's going to be an inspiration from a group of people or one person. And that could be something extremely profound or it's something extremely simple. So I would say that whoever I'm with in the current time, there will be a form of inspiration there somewhere. But specifically, I suppose I would say young people and children, because they say how it is. They actually have some wisdom, a lot of wisdom, just by talking, just by saying honest things. They have a huge amount of wisdom. And I suppose my partner, who has had a very different experience of life than me, but actually a similar experience than me. So there is an element of challenging there in a good way, and an element of connection in a very positive way. So without saying someone specifically, I think there's always inspiration out there. It's whether I choose to see it or not. So at those times I'm tired, maybe I don't see it more than I should. Um, but I'm human, so I'm not going to see them all the time. But I think inspiration is everywhere, and I mean, I could say lots of the writers and well-being people that I've followed over the years, but that would be true, but I have never been in experience with some of these people. Some of the people I have, but I haven't really been experienced with them to be with them. And I think the energy of being with someone is more powerful necessarily than reading. Well, that's also not true, but I think the point I'm making is that the people that I'm around all the time, there is an inspiration from someone somewhere, even if it's what we regard as a negative inspiration, which would then move me to do something else, to do something. That's an
Yeah,
inspiration.
a so-called negative. Well, yes, like you said, like you can look at things from all different kinds of perspectives. So yeah, just like, okay, what is this person here to teach me? Even though it might be a little bit difficult, it's yeah,
That's a
there.
question I ask myself a lot. What is this about? Why is this here? Come on, where's the answer? And if I sit with it long enough, it does answer itself eventually.
Yes, it does. Oh yeah, but yeah, being mindful and just like asking yourself, what is this here to teach me? This situation, or what is this person who's triggering me? What is he or her here to teach me? Yeah, just just by asking yourself these questions that opens up your mind. So I think we can end this podcast with that. And yeah, I can link all of your links below.
Yeah.
If you want to work with Jason, and yeah, you can also check out my offerings on my website. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your
Thank
wisdom.
you. Oh, it's just nice to talk. It's just nice to have conversations, because that's how we evolve all the time.
Yes,
So
it
nice to
is.
have that. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, I think we need to create a workshop or something from from all of the tools we've mentioned.
I think we make a workshop just from the conversation itself. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Whether that is
Yeah,
virtual or online, whether that's real or online, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need to plan something online in these times. I guess it will be a while before we can go back into real life.
Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful when we go back into the studio? And yes, that's going to be. We're going
Yeah,
to be so happy and grateful for that.
definitely. Like you are planning to come back to Norway in a year, you said?
Yes, yes. Well, I'll probably come over if I can, March time, because that's my 50th birthday. So I have lots of friends in Norway, so I'll probably come over for that. But yes, probably the summertime I may come over to do some work.
Well, we are looking forward to it. Yeah, it's exciting. Now that 2020 is coming towards an end, we
Yes,
shall see. Hopefully, I'll see you in live 2021.
yes, yes. Me too. That would be nice. Yeah. Absolutely.